Mr. Trump's decision to side so favorably with Mr. Putin on the war has fueled speculation that Washington was aiming to split Russia and China. China is a country that many senior Trump administration officials consider to be a far more serious threat to American interests. Some incoming officials in the Trump administration have suggested drawing down American troop levels in Europe, which serve as a bulwark against Russia, so Washington can focus its military efforts on defending against China. Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, told a panel earlier this month in Munich that the Trump administration was hoping to force Mr. Putin to fray his ties with North Korea, Iran, and China. Analysts, however, have expressed skepticism that China and Russia can be driven apart in what is being called a reverse Nixon, a reference to President Richard Nixon's rapprochement with Beijing in 1972 that was aimed at exploiting the worsening relations between China and the erstwhile Soviet Union. Unlike 53 years ago, ties between China and Russia today are at a high, with few prospects for domestic political change in either country. There's strategic and geopolitical alignment for this relationship. This is what Sergei Radchenko, a professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies who specializes in Chinese Russian relations, said. They don't see eye to eye on everything, but I think they both realize they need each other. Mr. Radchenko said Beijing was probably feeling uncomfortable with Mr. Trump's bid to court Mr. Putin, but that it was unlikely that Mr. Putin would see his interests better served by aligning more closely with the United States over China. The idea that Putin can be manipulated as some kind of weapon against China, I think that's naive on the part of the Trump administration, he said. How much China knew about Russia's plans in the run up to Mr. Putin's invasion of Ukraine 3 years ago remains unclear. A Western intelligence report issued shortly after the invasion concluded that senior Chinese officials had told senior Russian officials in early February not to invade Ukraine before the end of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. But the intelligence did not necessarily indicate that direct conversations about an invasion had taken place between Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi. China has denied any prior knowledge of the invasion, and Beijing did not evacuate its embassy or citizens from Ukraine in the days before the start of the war. Assertions that China knew about, acquiesced to, or tacitly supported this war are purely disinformation. Qin Gang, the Chinese ambassador to the United States of America at the time, wrote in a March 2022 article in the Washington Post. Mr. Xi Jinping is set to visit Moscow in May to attend the commemorations of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany in the Second World War, according to Russian state media. Mr. Putin has also invited Mr. Trump. The call on Monday between the Chinese and Russian leaders came as the Kremlin tries to keep its partner nations on its side while pursuing a warming of relations with the United States of America, a country Mr. Putin has long derided as an irresponsible global superpower. The president last week spoke about his desire to inform a series of government partners about the contacts with the Americans. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry S. Peskov said in a call with reporters on Monday. In line with those intentions, that process started today. The Kremlin added in a statement that Mr. Putin had informed Mr. Xi during their call about recent Russian-American contacts. It also said that China had expressed support for the dialogue between Russia and the United States of America that has begun, as well as readiness to contribute to the search for a peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian conflict. Mr. Putin also spoke with the leader of Tajikistan on Monday, and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei V. Lavrov met with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey. In the comments published by Chinese state media, Mr. Xi said he was pleased that Russia had started negotiations with other parties to end the Ukrainian crisis. So, the word for the war in Ukraine used by Russians is Ukrainian conflict, and the words used by the Chinese are Ukrainian crisis. Ukrainian conflict in Russia, Ukrainian crisis in China, not the Russian invasion of Ukraine in either country. China has yet to describe Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a war. Americans call it the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, China calls it Ukrainian crisis, Russia calls it Ukrainian conflict. Neither China nor Russia call it a war.